What is going on, Crimson Tide fans? Chris Daughtry here with the Alabama Football Report. I want to hear from you guys in the comment section of today's video. Has Alabama's roster improved this offseason? Let me know what you guys think. Type Y for yes or N for no. All right, first up on today's show, I want to talk some roster upgrades today. Alabama has definitely, in my opinion, upgraded their roster this offseason, but one group in particular, that wide receiver group, in my opinion, really does stick out as one of the top groups that improved during the offseason. Obviously, Alabama lost a couple wide receivers to the transfer portal. They lost Kadyn Proctor. He ended up going to Baylor. I went back and watched that Oklahoma game. And really, those two interceptions from Jalen Milroe are kind of on Kadyn Proctor. He was supposed to make blocks out there on the perimeter, didn't end up making those blocks, and the defender made a really good play on the ball to get those interceptions there. Kendrick Law ended up going to Kentucky. Alabama just never really was able to utilize his skill set the way I think a lot of people wanted them to. Caleb Odom ends up going to Ole Miss, Jaron Hamilton to Arizona State, and then Amari Jefferson ends up going back home to Tennessee. But Alabama got probably a wide receiver that, if I'm not mistaken, probably had more yards last year than all five of those guys combined in Isaiah Horton. And, you look at the season last year for him, 56 receptions, 616 yards, 5 touchdowns for him. Since 2023, 100 targets for Isaiah Horton. Only 4 drops out of those 100 targets. So he's really been, incredible in his time at college. And I think even in that Miami offense, he was like their number 3 or number 4 wide receiver with 616 yards. That's really impressive. And he also did tell the media a couple days ago that, we do have the team to accomplish what we need to do. And I think one thing of note as well, also noted today, I believe it was, that Ty Simpson was actually his quarterback in 7-on-7 in high school. So that connection's already there. He said Ty Simpson's my guy. So that connection with Ty Simpson and Isaiah Horton, I think that's going to help both of them in terms of going into next season. But then, you talk about Isaiah Horton, he still might be the number 3 wide receiver here at Alabama because you have Ryan Williams and you have Jeremy Bernard. Both of those guys were incredible for you last season. And really, when you look at the stats from last year, they were the only 2 wide receivers that you could really count on. Your number 3 pass catcher last year was C.J. Dupree, a tight end. Your number 4 pass catcher was Josh Cuevas, a tight end. Your number 5 pass catcher was Jam Miller, and he's a running back. So, Kadyn Proctor, he was your number 6 pass catcher last year, only 129 yards. So I definitely think this wide receiver group is just going to, end up being one of the better position groups on this Alabama roster. You're also adding Jalen Hale as well. Very unfortunate last season, wasn't able to play because of that knee injury for him. But that big play ability there for Jalen Hale, I think, is what makes this wide receiver group just really, really exciting. I think all 4 of those starting wide receivers are going to have that big play ability. And look, I may be falling into the spring propaganda here, but this wide receiver group for Alabama sure does look and sound like it could be one of the best wide receiver groups in the country. You also look at a guy like Rico Scott. There's been a lot of buzz about him. Latsier Brooks, there's been a ton of buzz about him as well. Jalen Mbakwe coming over to the other side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball in that wide receiver group. And then Cole Adams. He's a guy that you can just stick in there. And he's a utility guy that just kind of does it all for you. That's the wide receiver group, but you also have other pass catchers as well in that tight end group. I think Josh Cuevas is a guy that really has a chance to, quote unquote anyways, break out for Alabama. I thought what he did last year for you was really impressive as well. 218 yards on 16 receptions. He is a tight end at the end of the day, so you're not expecting him to, go out there and, put up 500 yards, plus or anything like that. But you look to what Jack Westover did in that 2023 run with Washington when they had all of those, just incredible pass catchers. He also had 46 receptions, 433 yards, and 4 touchdowns as well. So if you can get that kind of production out of a guy like Josh Cuevas, man, no matter who's going to be the quarterback for Alabama next season, they definitely got a lot of guys that they can get the ball to. So let me know here at the pinned comment of today's video, guys. Will Alabama have a 1,000-yard wide receiver in 2025? I think this could be a little bit of a trick question because you have so many options there at that wide receiver position, as well as pass catchers out of the backfield from those running backs as well. This going into this season, Alabama is going to spread the ball out a lot. You got a lot of really good targets, so you might not have a 1,000-yard wide receiver. You might even have 4 wide receivers with at least 500 yards. But let me know what you guys think at the pinned comment of today's video. Type 1 for yes or 0 for no. Next up on today's show, I want to talk about the Ryan Grubb impact, especially along this offensive line. Jaeden Roberts noted that Ryan Grubb's offensive line background has been very notable this spring. And you think about this Alabama offensive line, I think consistency is just something that they have lacked the past couple of years. And you think back to last year, too, the continuity in that group was, really up and down. At the beginning of the year, Kadyn Proctor was out for the beginning of the year, so you had to have, I believe it was Elijah Pritchett out left tackle for that first game, and then early in the season you also had to have Tyler Booker slide over there to that left tackle spot. At one point, you were starting anyways Wilkin Formby at that right tackle position, and then you also at the right guard position. Yeah, Jaeden Roberts and Geno Vandermark also switching in and out at that right guard spot. So really the only legitimate spot that you had most of the season was that center spot, and really Tyler Booker at left guard as well. But like I said, he had to slide over to that left tackle spot early in the season as well. I think that does hurt the continuity of that offensive line a little bit, but I mean, it's been a continual thing the past couple of years. Alabama's offensive line has just not really been as consistent as they used to be. This is what Jaeden Roberts said about Ryan Grubb and just his mentality along the offensive line. He said, yeah, most definitely. You can see that he isn't an offensive line guy. Even for a small height, definitely an offensive line guy. It's kind of some shade there talking about his height, but it is funny. You can see that sometimes during practice, he gets honest. He only does that because he knows how capable we can of being really good. I just love his character. You know what I mean? He pushes me. He pushes the whole offense to be better than what we want to become. I think that's a very notable quote as well. He pushes the offense to be better than what they even want to become. That is just a great thing to hear there. He has the vision to where you just want to follow behind him and just get better. Now, when you're talking about this offensive line, in specifically Ryan Grubb, I think it's nice. It's kind of like adding another offensive line coach to this Alabama coaching staff because, like we just said, Alabama's offensive line these past couple of seasons have just kind of been mid at the end of the day. There's been no consistency getting any kind of push in the run game. Clint Lamb of Cover Crimson, he talked about Alabama's first scrimmage, and he said they weren't necessarily hitting these explosive 20 yards runs, but they were consistently popping off for 5-6 yards per carry, and that's been better what it has been. Looking back to the last couple of seasons, did anybody really have any confidence that if you're going out there on a 3rd and 3 that you were going to be able to pick that up? I certainly didn't. So, when you're talking about this offensive line, I get crucified all the time talking about Wilkin Formby, and I'm going to continue to do that because I think he's going to be the guy at that right tackle position. But, I do think you're going to see a different player when it comes to Wilkin Formby coming up this season. You could see the growth from that second game of the season where he was not very good. The first game he was very good, and a lot of people just, forget about that because the second game was so bad. But, he ended up playing a lot for Elijah Pritchett at the end of the season. I think the last 3 games of the year, he had double-digit snaps in all 3 of those games, and even that game against Michigan, the game against Auburn. Elijah Pritchett got benched in those games, and I thought Wilkin Formby played pretty well. You also have the battle at that right guard position as well right now that, might even take into the season before we figure out who is actually going to be that consistent, or did I say right guard? I meant left guard anyways. You have a lot of really solid options there. And I do think Geno Vandermark has a really good shot of being that starter there at left guard. But look, Cam Dewberry is a very intriguing option as well out of the transfer portal. And he did not come to Alabama to end up being a backup at that left guard spot. But look, he's also going to have to, go out there and win the job. He's not just going to be given the job because he was the perceived guy to come in and win it at the end of the day. You got to earn it, and I think that's going to be a very, very fun position battle to watch as well. So let me know what you guys think here in the comments section. Pick a left guard for me. Type GV if you think it's going to be Geno Vandermark, or type KD if you think it's going to be Cam Dewberry. Before we continue here in just a second, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. You guys can get up to 30% off right now on some Alabama football gear just by going to chatsports.com/Bama hoodie. Really, really like this camo one right there. It's got the American flag on the sleeve. You can see it right there. All you guys got to do, go over to chatsports.com/Bama hoodie, and you guys can get up to 30% off. They've got a lot of really good deals going on right now, so I highly encourage you guys. If you need some new Alabama gear for A-Day, if you need some new Alabama gear for next season, make sure you guys go over to Fanatics. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's video. Now, Alabama did also vote for a new leadership group this season. You got Qua Russaw, Tim Keenan, LT Overton, Ty Simpson, and Kadyn Proctor all voted to that leadership group here. And I think it is very important to note this. This was not a team captain's vote. It's different, apparently. They're going to vote team captains early in next fall camp, but I do think that group of players right there is a very good group of candidates to be team captains next season, and I really do love trench players stepping up and being leaders on this team. Credit to Tim Keenan. I apologize. I was not familiar with your game. He was a very vocal leader for Alabama last season, and you could really see that in that Fox Nation documentary. And really, he did remind me, I forget exactly who it was, but there was a player a few years ago, I think it was in one of those 60-minute clips when they came in and they, did a segment on Alabama. And there was a player that stepped up along the defensive line that was, Nick Saban was trying to talk, and everybody on the team was fired up after practice, and they were all chatting it up. And he was like, hey, everybody needs to shut up. Nobody should be talking while this man right here is talking. So I really love that energy. And if Alabama can get that kind of energy and leadership back for this 2025 squad, I think they have a very good chance to at least make a push in the college football playoffs. So name a player that you guys think should be a team captain in 2025. I'm going to give some options here in just a second, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments section of today's show. All right, this is my list of just possible team captains. Everybody on the left is the exact same, but I threw some more names there on the right. I think Jam Miller, he's been in the program for a long time. He's going to be a running back one this season. I think he's a good option there. Jeremy Bernard, he's a guy that came over with Kalen DeBoer, same right there as Parker Brailsford. And look, Jeremy Bernard, I think when you're talking about the wide receivers, I think Ryan Williams as a sophomore is probably still a little bit too young to be a team captain, but Jeremy Bernard does seem like a leader for this team. And then when you're talking about Parker Brailsford, the center is kind of your captain of the offensive line. So I would not be opposed to having Parker Brailsford as a captain as well. Deontay Lawson was voted as captain last year. Don't necessarily know how fast he's going to be back from that injury, but if you're a captain last year, think kind of you probably should be a captain this year as well. Damani Jackson, he came over from USC in the transfer portal, had an incredible breakout season, in my opinion, for Alabama last season. I think he's an option, and an honorable mention for me, Jaeden Roberts at that right guard spot. He's a guy that is just a behemoth of a person. He goes out there, they, compare him to, Hulk all the time, and I think he's a really good player, really good leader on this team. Jaeden Roberts, definitely another player I think could potentially be a team captain next year.